I cannot hear you. I know. Nope.
Now?
No. Oh, yeah. There you are.
Okay. I was like, I heard it click. I think it clicks the speakers before it clicks the mic. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah, sorry. I didn't realize that there wasn't a meeting listed in my calendar. Like
Oh,
the meeting, the time was saved, but there was no Zoom link.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
don't know why. And I have another meeting that's probably gonna be exactly like that a half hour after this one. So
Oh,
I should
nice.
probably fix that, but I'll get to it in a sec.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
brought over a box cutter and didn't even need it.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. So these are your pads that didn't work.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Is it normal for the left hand and the right hand to be two different sizes?
yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Older flutes,
Yeah.
um, it is common to see them the same size, but modern flutes, it's more common to see them different.
Gotcha.
So that's why when you just said they were all the same, I was like, okay, it's fine. They're all the same. I didn't think to ask. They could be different.
Well,
But
okay, so what happened was I was waiting on my spring to unpin my right hand, right?
hmm
So it was just like off to the side, just like chilling, and I hadn't even started looking at it yet. And so when I got the new pads and did all the things, it was like, oh, nope, that's no, okay, great. So my bad, totally my bad.
it's fine. I should have said, I think I even had this like small thought that I should ask when we were picking out the sizes, but I was like, she knows what she's got the flute in front of her. She'd notice.
I do. Well, I did. Yeah. Well, my student model was just all the same size, so I was like,
Right.
okay, well,
Yeah.
it's all gonna be the same. No, no.
Yeah. It's okay. I did
Now I
another one earlier this week where so I partner with music and arts to do rentals. And
mm,
so they sent a guy out here to do their yearly inventory on Wednesday.
mhm.
And Wednesday kind of turned into a Wednesday afternoon is chaotic day. And
Oh, good.
as we were trying to finish up, I like I keep 98% of their instruments in the back. And
Okay.
so we were in the back, we counted all those. And we're coming up front. And as we're coming up front, I'm not thinking we have more to count. I'm thinking,
Mm,
let's, move on to the next step. And then I get interrupted with a visitor who I haven't seen in a while visiting.
mhm.
And
Yes.
so I get caught up with him. Music and arts guy's finishing up our inventory, thinks we're done, leaves.
Oh no. Oh no.
And then 10, like, yeah, about 10 minutes after the other guy left. So this is now, I don't know, another 20, 30 minutes have gone by since the music and arts guy left. That's when I look at my front room, and that's where all of my clarinets sit. And I was like, how did we miss an entire orchestra section? It's like we
Oh,
counted all the string instruments, all the brass instruments, which is trumpets and trombones. It's rentals.
mm,
That's all they use.
yeah.
But and then flutes and saxophones, and did not think, where are the clarinets? But I have them
Oh,
inside because every single one of the rental clarinets we have are wood.
oh yeah.
And like the thin wall string wood instruments, if they're gonna crack more in shipping than they are gonna crack like being stored in the back. But like the wood
Mhm.
clarinets, I'm a little more worried about those. So I keep them up front. I had to call him back. I was like, so I goofed. And he's like, what happened? And I was like, well, we didn't count clarinets. And he's like,
Kind of a big deal.
no, we didn't. I was like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
So there was two of us, two musicians went through the entire what we thought was the orchestra score and went, you don't need
Ah,
clarinets.
dang it. Don't need them. It's fine.
Oh. So yeah, that was Wednesday.
Nice.
Yep. Okay. So I see pads in the foot joint. And I see pads in half of the body. So it's just these
The
4
hat?
pads that you don't have.
Yes.
Cool.
And I have leveled all of the pads that are on there. I just
Uh-huh.
haven't adjusted or anything yet.
Okay. So let me switch cameras so you can
Okay.
get a better view of what I'm doing. Sort of. I have to actually move everything around. Want the notifications to go away. Go away. Why? There we go.
No.
Okay, now we
No.
can switch cameras. Fun times. This one? Yes. Okay. Good. So just right off the bat, I just noticed your trill's not closing. It's just your springs on backwards.
Oh, good.
So
Great.
nothing crazy. I just was like, why is this moving?
I did that real quick right before I put it in the box, so probably didn't take enough time to do that
That's
properly.
okay. It's a spring.
Obviously. I would have
No.
figured it out if I looked
Yeah,
at it for 10 seconds.
if you'd gotten it to a playable position and you tried to play it and that was still like that,
Oh,
you
I
would
would
have
have known.
noticed.
Would have
There's my
known.
spring
Yeah.
hook. Okay, where'd that go? So
Yeah, because I got it to play at least to G, and then I took it all off and put the right hand on and put it all back on again. So yeah.
okay. So the lights. Hopefully everything's plugged in. It's been 2 days since I used it last, so
Hmm.
no telling. All right. Your trill springs just feel light.
Hmm.
Maybe that's just the spring. What is this? Jupiter? I would expect
Mhm.
Jupiter springs to close a little bit harder.
Hmm.
Okay, so right off the bat, that pad that we were just looking at. Hold on, I'm gonna turn it dark. Be easier to see this.
Okay. I did iron one of the trills. I forget which one.
As long as Zoe sits still. I don't kick her. Okay. Let's see. So let's get an idea of what a closed key looks like. So yeah, got a spring issue there. So that one's sealing pretty well. You can kind of see what that looks like. And then bright white for leaks. The camera doesn't like picking up sealing very well.
Yeah.
Anyway, go back to this. Can you see that gap on both those
Yeah.
trill keys? So we're
Yeah.
not this one, the second one here is
Mhm.
closing better than this first one. This first one in person, there's a much more obvious gap.
Okay.
Just right at the front. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because when you go over here, your C key is not closing at all. So It looks a lot worse in camera. I'm gonna tell you that much.
Terrible from here.
If I light that back up, I am closing it,
Mhm.
but you see kind of the gap at the front there.
The front, yeah.
Um, again, still looks worse on camera than it does in person. It's just the way the camera absorbs the light and
Mhm.
converts it. But that first point of contact when you press down on the key and you feel it hit the tone hole,
Mhm.
it's a little bit sooner than you think. So that's what I'm feeling for when I close that key is I'm feeling for that first point of contact. As soon as I feel that contact, I stop putting pressure.
Okay.
So that's a little bit of that's an easy fix. Just reseat all those. And I would probably strengthen the trill springs just a hair. Just because I don't think they're gonna consistently bounce back.
Okay.
Um, they probably would. They'd probably be fine for a year or so. But I think that a trill would sound better if they bounce back a little bit harder and a little bit
Okay.
faster.
Mhm.
Just I because on the trill side of things, I mean that's my not trill hand, but let's flip it around. I'm 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 moving my finger fast enough that this key is barely leaving my hand because
Mhm.
I'm the one actually guiding the trill and not the trill bouncing back whenever I open it.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
usually I can move a little bit faster. It's not closing all the
Mm.
way. And part of that, I need bad positioning. I'm not getting my finger all the way up, but it's not
Yeah.
it's not getting all the way up closed. More of an
Okay.
annoyance than anything else. Not something any student would notice.
I'll compare it with my flutes when I tweak the springs and see
Yeah.
if I can make it better.
So uh another just didn't get the spring attached. No biggie.
Like I said, it was really quick.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
one of the things I like to do when I finish a job, and not to
Uh-huh.
say you're finished, but when I finish a job to avoid the issue of handing an instrument to somebody and then they go, why isn't this key working? And it's literally just a
Mhm.
spring. Is the last thing I do is I take my oil bottle here and I'm not going to do it to yours because I don't know what oil you used, but for I just go down the entire instrument and oil every opening where the oil can
Mhm.
go in. And I start at the
Mhm.
top and um depending on the instrument, I have my own pattern as to like what order I'm gonna do it in just to make sure I hit every single key. So for flute,
Mhm.
I'll hit like all the tops and I go down into the posts, like top to bottom. Um, but when I get to like a saxophone or something, I'll do like I break it down into I'm gonna do the main line, and then I'll do the side keys, and I'll do the upper
Mhm.
side keys and the lower side keys, and then I'll do the bell keys. Just so I go through every single one, and all the whole time I'm doing that, I'm looking for inconsistencies in my work. I'm looking for did I tighten the screw down in place entirely? Did I miss a spring? Is there something funky going on with a movement of a key? So it's just like a nice little final step to make sure you didn't miss anything minor that a customer would
Mhm.
think is major.
Right.
So
My key doesn't work.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they panic and you're like, it's really not
Let
that big of
me,
a deal.
yeah. Let me push this right back into place for you. Here you go.
And then they think you're
Uh,
magic and world is right again.
right.
um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So um visually I'm seeing what is potentially a little tiny little leak over here. Yeah. Yep. Not a huge one. I mean, like It's small enough that if the smallest shim size you have is the 0.002, that would be too thick.
Okay.
This mylar is 0.005 of an inch, and so it's not touching. I bet you if I grab my, do I have one made? Well, that was, I don't think I have one made that's a 1/1000th of an inch. But if I had that, it would probably be touching all the way around.
Okay.
Maybe. Let's just try the really thick one and see what. And this should, I think this is 3/1000.
Okay.
Yeah, that touches. So
I was going back and forth, and I just realized just now that I haven't posted my videos yet, but I have done them.
you know, I haven't. I wondered because I checked on the videos on like Monday, and I was like, I thought she said she'd done them, but I don't see them. So
yeah,
and
no,
but I haven't watched Stephanie's either, so you know,
okay.
that's on me.
It's yeah. Well, I have them. I'll turn them in. But I have a leak light for this class, and I didn't have one last time, so I've been going back and forth between like, I think I see a leak here. Let me get my feeler gauge and see if I can feel one, and like going back and forth that way.
And that's good. That's a good way to, because it is good to know how to do both, because
Yeah.
I mean, you can work on flutes with, one or the other. If you ever decided, to help a clarinetist out, you'd have to use a feeler gauge. Like you can't put a leak light in a clarinet. So being able to do both is good. And it also is helpful because like certain clients are going to be more picky than others. And so that, when I have a really picky client, I like to try if I can get I prefer the leak light. So I have my preference, but if I know somebody's really picky, I try to focus on more feeler gauge work. It just takes longer. That's why I don't like it as much. Yeah. So, but if I know the client's picky, I'm like, okay, we
can be picky.
Hi. Sorry, the dog's getting a ride home. See ya. Dog barking at a ride.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Part of my crazy week was one of my coworkers almost hit a dog on her way into work, so she brought it into the office.
Oh.
And so we had a little pug in our office that we needed to find a home for.
Oh.
I work at a hospital, so that's awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it was a good morning. I got nothing done. It was fine.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
Last night on my way home, we live kind of out in the country. And so there's a good like 15 to 20 minute portion of my drive that's country road. Major country road, not like minor. So the deer don't like the road. They know it's dangerous, but they're still deer.
They still are deer. Yeah, 100%.
This one deer, I pulled up to this corner, and at this corner, the only thing at it is a fire station off to one side. And then on the other side, across the street from the fire station, is a pasture, but it has like a hill up from the road. The deer is literally right next to the road. And I'm like starting to go forward. This deer doesn't want to go up the hill. It wants to just it ran next to the road for like, I don't know, 50 feet to 100 feet before jumping up into the pasture and getting away from me. But I was like, I don't know which way you're gonna turn. So I'm just sitting there like going 3 miles an hour behind this deer.
Yeah. 100%.
So I don't hit it.
Yep.
Fun
Meanwhile,
stories.
you're freaking out the entire time.
Exactly. Is
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
has this focused at all since I touched it a minute ago?
No. Mm-mm.
Oh. Well, it focuses
There.
there.
It did focus there.
There we go. Okay.
It was focused when you had like the flute lifted up
Okay.
high.
Gotcha. That's
That's
probably
how it
what
was
it did
focused.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so what I like to do on these, and you might remember level one, I don't know. Since I'm sending it back to
Mm,
you, is I'm gonna like mark up where I find leaks so that you can
great.
fix them later.
Great.
And the main reason I like this is because you can kind of compare how light I'm touching to how not so light you're touching.
Okay.
um so that one, this is feeler gauge. I would say this is feeler and light. This line over here. I don't know if you're
Okay.
gonna be able to like read this when I'm done. Um, but I will say, no, that's actually a little higher. No, it's there. Yeah, I can see that now. Couldn't a minute ago.
That's what I found too, going back and forth, is some things are easier to see and others are easier to feel, just depending on how the keys are and
Mm-hmm.
where the link is. And
Yeah, I'd say this actually needs a full size shim. I'm gonna write it right here.
okay.
Because it's touching in the front, but it's really not touching anywhere here in the back.
Mm,
So if you did a 2, it might be a little much, but since you're doing a full size shim, it might work just fine.
okay.
If you have a 1, I would try that first.
Okay.
So, but
I
I
actually
don't
need
know if
one.
1s are hard to find.
Okay.
JL Smith does carry them, and Music Center in Italy does carry them. Um, no one else does, at least that I know of.
Okay.
Out of the companies that I buy from, they're the only 2 carriers that carry the 1,000th of an inch. Or yeah, and when you order, if you ever decide to do a big order of shims from Music Center in Italy, um, all of their shims are water resistant except the 0.001s because they're too thin. So I think they put some kind of a coating. They feel different. They definitely feel different.
Okay.
They feel a little more
Waxy.
plasticky, but not.
Okay. Okay.
Um, it still feels like paper when you tear it and everything, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's a film over it to kind of keep it from absorbing water. Um,
Sure.
which is, a perk. And they do that because the whole idea with the mylar shims was to have a shim that was water resistant. Like it would not be affected by moisture at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which they aren't, but they're just really bouncy. And for the shape of the cup, when
Mm-hmm.
you drop them in the cup, unless the cup has a flat CNC bottom to it, they're gonna have a bit of a bounce under the pad, and they don't conform to the shape of the cup ever because they're plastic. They have to melt
Mm-hmm.
first. So they're a little bit trickier to work with.
Sure.
Um, sorry, I've been having emails about shims lately, so
Good to know.
this is where my brain's been, is Mylar versus paper.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a leak there. That I think is either from a flaw in the pad or a flaw in the tone hole. So it's just a little one.
I know. Yeah. I forget. I think it was that one. I thought the pad was funky.
Yeah, so partial
Yep.
shim in that section there, and that should help.
Okay.
Yeah, when the pad is funky or when the tone hole is funky is when the partial shims come out.
Mhm.
That's when they really show you their worth.
Yeah.
But they do take forever to install sometimes.
Yeah.
There is a bit, so this section here, which you can't see my Sharpie marks all that well. That's the majority of the leak, but this
Okay.
leak does go back to here
Like
some.
11-ish, 10,
Yeah.
11.
So you could break this into two shims and do a partial shim that goes from here to the furthest one, and
Mhm.
then see what this small section looks like.
Okay.
Or you could do a little bit thicker shim, like a 0.002 or a 0.004, just in this small partial, and put it together and see how this looks. Because sometimes when you put a little bit thicker partial in, it evens out where the issues are around it a little bit more,
Sure.
because it's not just reacting with that particular section of the pad. The whole pad reacts to that partial.
Right. Right.
So either way, you could. I would say the safer alternative is to use as thin as you can, and go larger distances, and then work on the smaller distances from there, and kind of Christmas tree the whole thing. But
Mhm.
for time purposes, sometimes on intermediate and student models, I'll just take care of the big issue and see where
Mhm.
we are. If that works, great. If it doesn't, I'll go back to the Christmas tree effect.
Sure. Yeah.
Now that looks like a bent key. I think. G sharp's kind of in the way. But I would say this. Yeah, you've marked this leak here.
Mhm.
Is maybe this is the one that you were having issues with if you saw Sharpie on it.
Maybe. I took some of the Sharpie off and didn't take some of it off. So
I'm gonna try to bend that key and see what
okay.
happens. Because I think this key here, not this one, but that one is tilted. It's not parallel to the tone hole. And
Okay.
so what I'm looking for when I'm looking for that is when I close, it helps me when I close the key, I look for the height difference between the bottom of the pad cup and the top of the tone hole. And I look
Okay.
at both sides and I compare the two edges.
Mhm.
And this one looks a little bit closer than this side. So I
Okay.
think we're a little high over here and a little low over here. And it just makes leveling the pad that much harder.
Yeah.
Then knock everything over on my desk. So when I'm bending something like this, I want, some kind of a gap creator, and I don't want to damage the tone hole. So I'll either use a popsicle stick on the body because it's usually taller than the tone hole itself.
Hmm.
If I can't get that distance from there, I'll use something plastic and soft. You can still use a thinned out popsicle stick, and you can
Mhm.
set it on the tone hole and try to bend it there. I just try to do that less because it is on the tone hole. I'd rather do
Yeah.
that from the body. Not really wanting to move, which is annoying,
It would be too easy if it just worked.
right? Try to combine methods here. So this is just this is a metal shim
Okay.
with a flash. Um,
Awesome.
don't know if I'm gonna have the space for this, so I'm keeping the popsicle stick on the body and then
Right.
using the metal shim on the cup as stability. I think I popped my back doing that, and I don't know if the cup
Oh,
moved.
wow.
Okay, we do have some movement. Because now if I close get this all the way. If I close this, it's actually not closing on either side, and now we have first contact over here.
Okay.
So that's when we go back to evening out the G's. Let's see what we've got.
Yeah, I haven't even looked at stuff like that yet. I just kind of wanted to add it as best as
Yeah.
I could. Yeah.
Well, when you've got pads on both of them, you kind of have to then immediately go to this part to like actually seat the pads.
Sure.
So I with the G's anyway, with the evil twins, I do this at the same time as I do padding because I
That makes sense.
personally I pad both of them at the same time. You can do padding the first one and then taking that pad out and marking like keeping it separate, making sure your 12s are marked on everything, and then pad this one and
Mm-hmm.
then put them in together. It just, from a time frame point of view, it takes longer. So I
I
pad them together.
Yeah, I started padding them together and then did not, I forgot to mark 12 o'clock on the pads and then made myself very frustrated. And then I went to
Yeah.
just doing one at a time. And then I learned to mark 12 o'clock
Yeah.
to not
Yep.
get frustrated. So yeah, that happened with the G's. So
Yeah, that'll set you back for sure.
yeah.
Goodness gracious. Okay, you're probably gonna have to bend that a little bit more. But right now, the issue is that this key is only touching in the front.
Mm, okay.
And this key, if it's touching at all, okay, it is. It's touching from 6 to 5:30.
Ooh.
That's it. It's not touching in
Great.
the back at all. Um,
Okay.
so that's where you could go at an angle and push down from the back sometimes. And no, it moved it. So now it's probably hitting in the back and not in the front.
Of course.
Yep. But a lot more is hitting in the back than what was hitting in the
Mm,
front.
okay.
So we're now hitting from about 9 o'clock to, come on, help me out here. 9 to midnight.
Okay. That's better than 6 to 5:30.
Yeah. Might be. It might still be only 9 to like 10, 11:30, but you just kind of keep moving things around. And
Yeah.
I'm closing these really lightly.
Okay.
Because I kind of want to show you the extreme. Because
Okay.
the better you can get it, you know, you doing extreme, the better you'll get it, more advanced flutes.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some flute players that play like this. um, so it's with I find flute players tend to have more people that are very the instrument needs to play as soon as I, make it touch two things together. They're
Mm-hmm.
very light fingered. Um,
Well, and I've had multiple teachers tell me to play like that too, so
yeah,
that makes.
yeah. That's because the lighter you play, the less tension you have in your hands. and the
Mm-hmm.
faster passages that you can play.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, all the woodwinds should be playing like that. But because, clarinets don't get super fast passages all the time, and saxophones don't get super fast passages all the time, they're not focused on that as much as the flutes are.
Makes sense.
They do it. They do encourage their players to play lighter and play
Mm-hmm.
faster, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not usually until like second or third year of college that they go, oh yeah, this is how you should be playing.
By the way, reach, start, everything. You're
Yeah.
doing it
Yeah, but the second you walk into a flute lesson, it's like, okay, we're just gonna start you from ground zero.
right.
And test you on all these skills. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah. Go as fast as possible. Now, go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a leak in your G sharp too. Yeah, these are pretty light. Your G sharp, interesting. It's open. This is a clock that's upside down and backwards.
At 9 o'clock.
No, this is 2 o'clock.
Oh, you're okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's open between like 2 and 4.
Okay.
And I think that's it. I think.
I can work with that.
Yeah. So it's also just barely open. So one of the things I don't think we have discussed yet is clamping.
Mm.
So I do this with student flutes more than I do with professional flutes.
Mm-hmm.
Just because professionals want a little bit more accuracy.
Mm.
But one of the last steps that you can do, if you get it this close, where it's touching mostly everywhere, you just have a few tiny little things that are needing to be sealed up. What the factories do is usually steam it or bake it. So they clamp everything down, and after they wet all the pads, so they clamp it down, and then they usually have a big oven or steam chamber.
One of the
And,
techs that I worked with made like a makeshift easy bake oven with a mailbox and a light bulb,
mhm,
and that
yeah,
one. So yeah.
they actually sell those as flute ovens.
Do they?
Yeah,
Either. He was an original.
yeah. I don't use an oven. Um, there it is. This is my clamp box. And I've got 2 types of clamps in here. No, 3 types. Homemade.
Okay.
Which is made from freight packing wire. What they use, the big metal wire that they use to like clamp freight boxes to the pallets.
Mm.
I have a massive roll of it because I did not realize how massive the roll was gonna be. It acts like a spring too. If you let it out of its cage, it will spring across the whole room, and then you're left with this mess to clean up. And the only way to clean it up is to coil it back up. Anyway, these are the Farise clamps.
Okay.
One of the Farise clamps. Both of these others you can get Farise or Allied. Now a lot of techs find for flute repair that these are really heavy. Like the amount of pressure they put down on the pads and the keys is a lot more than they prefer. So, a little trick is to heat up the coil here at the end until it releases and it doesn't clamp as hard.
Okay.
The trick is after that, remembering which ones you've done and which ones you haven't, because I've only done like half of mine. But it does mean that they don't clamp they only close the pads, so much, and
Hmm.
they're not over pressing, because you can over clamp, and when you clamp, you can clamp so hard that whenever you treat the flute with heat, the seat of the pad gets so deep that they actually stick no matter what you do. They're just grabbing the tone hole whenever the pad's going down.
Hmm.
Um, these are the other clamps that I've been testing out, and I kind of like them because they're not as strong.
Hmm.
They do have a bit of strength to them, but they're not as strong. And they're covered in there's a like plastic covering over
Okay.
these portions here.
Yeah.
Um, so they're not going to scratch.
Hmm.
They take up less room in my box.
Yeah, that's kind of nice.
Yeah. Um. Anyway, you wet the pads and then you clamp them, and you try to clamp them with even tension all the way down. Ideally, you have your adjustments already in place and you're only clamping the keys that you're actually closing, like with your fingers, and you don't
Hmm.
have to clamp everything else because they're going to be held closed with the adjustments.
Hmm.
Um, and then I use this is a heat coil, so it's just a really long heat um, element, essentially.
Okay.
And I shove this inside the flute, and it's long enough to go through the flute body and foot joint. So I
Nice.
connect the two together and I go through both. It sticks out like an inch or two on either end. And you plug it in. There's no on or off switch. It heats up as soon as you plug it in. And I heat it until I see steam coming from the flute pad. As soon as I see steam, I unplug it. I leave the element in the flute until
Okay.
everything's cooled off. Um, and it's usually like 2 minutes max. Um, I've also done this in the past with my leak lights,
Okay.
because the leak lights actually get pretty warm.
Okay.
Um, I clamp it, and with the leak light, because it gets to a certain temperature and doesn't go any higher than that really. Where that heat coil, they get hot, they
Just
could
keep
boil
going. Yeah.
water.
Mhm.
Um, so those you really have to watch. You're nice because you're sped up on time, but um, you have to babysit them. Whereas if I, you know, not this leak light doesn't really get that hot, but if I use one of my leak lights that gets really hot, shove it
Mhm.
in the flute, walk away, go take lunch for a half hour and come back.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that that's what you all they're all different ways to get to the same end result. You're putting a seat into the pad. Hopefully not too much of a seat, and hopefully you haven't used too much water. Um Another way to do it is to clamp everything down dry, and then uh, essentially you plug up one end, and on the other end you insert a steam, uh, something that produces steam and funnels it in.
Mhm.
Um, at my last job, we had a espresso machine steamer that
Mhm.
my boss had rigged. And he really rigged it. He made a whole new like holder for it. Um and we had a hose coming off of it. That hose would blow steam directly into the instrument, and worked great for saxophones. Man, that thing, it was wonderful on saxophones. Flute pads, it got a little aggressive if you left it on for 30 seconds too long.
Mhm.
Um, I actually had one flute where I left it on for 2 minutes instead of 1 minute or something. Maybe I did 3 minutes instead of 2 minutes. Whatever I did. I
Mhm.
did it like a minute too long.
Mhm.
And I, you know, when I got done, everything looked good. The flute is soaking when you're done. And so you're oiling this thing super well before you start, because you don't want any water to get in those hinge tubes.
Mhm.
Um, so I set it off the side, and when you do that system, you have to let it dry for 24 hours before you can touch it again.
Okay.
So you can't remove the clamps immediately. Um, so I came back the next day, and all the pads had exploded,
Oh.
and I started over.
Oh,
Yeah.
sad day.
And that was the first professional instrument that I had done a steam job on, like steaming the
Mhm.
pads. And that's
Mhm.
the last professional flute that I steamed the pads on.
Scared. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't doing that again. Anyway,
Quite quick on that one.
yeah, was like, we're not doing this ever again to a professional because it was open hole and everything, and I had to redo the entire overhaul.
Mm.
So I mean, to the point of I didn't have to redo like the tone holes, but I had to redo all the pads and all the shims and everything like that. So yeah, tiny leaks. You're
Um,
I will say the leaks that you have are really close.
okay.
That's more of an adjustment issue than a leak
Yeah,
issue.
I
There
saw
is
that.
there is a leak issue here, but that's an adjustment issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't tell if there's a leak issue here or not.
Sure.
But visually, that one looks great. Honestly, even in camera, that looks pretty good.
It does.
There is a bit of a leak right here.
Okay.
And oh, it goes all the way to the back. It goes all the way to here. So this section right there across the back isn't sealing. But the front, that section looks great. So you're really close with the pads that you've installed. You're really close. Um, so I don't know if it was me, if I would finish these four and then go back to reshimming everything, because it kind of puts your brain into a, okay, I've got this far done. I've got the
Mhm.
pads at least installed. Now let's go back and like finesse the seats.
Yeah.
Um, I think if I would did it the other way, if I went and fixed these before installing those four, I would probably hate it by the time I got to the point where I was fixing all those. That's how my brain
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
I'd be done. So,
Yeah, I think our brains work similarly. So yeah.
yeah. But all your leaks are pretty small. They're significant because they're going to compound on each other.
Right.
Um, but they're about the same height, put it that way.
Okay. Okay.
Um, they're all, in that 1,000th to 2,000ths range. This one might be the only four I see, and that's just because it's at the back and it's
Mhm.
pretty big at 12. You can
Sure.
almost see how big that is at 12.
Yeah.
So, and most of your leaks are like, full shim here. Just, a small full shim would probably take care of it. You
Mhm.
get a couple where it could be because the key looks a little bent and it's not necessarily the padding, but it's close enough that it honestly could be either or. It's,
Mhm.
whatever it is. If this, let's say it had all the pads in it and at one point it had been working and, a student brought me this flute, I would probably be more likely to take, this leak here and try to bend the key to fix it instead of shimming pages. But being that they're new pads, I would rather shim than do a ton of bending.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but it's kind of down to, what works best.
Mhm.
Yeah, that helped evening out the two sides. You can also make sure that your pad's actually like evenly tucked into the pad cup. And when I'm trying to check for that, I grab one that's a full circle and not necessarily pressing down on the tone hole so much as trying to make sure that that pad is actually evenly pressed into the cup all the way around. That alone, that helped out this one quite a bit, actually.
Okay.
So the downside with this is that sometimes if you overdo it in the back, you'll end up with the back wide open and the front perfect. Because you've pushed the back side of that pad so far into the cup that you've actually squished the felt, and it needs some time to kind of puff back up if it's going to.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and you'll think you're done, and then you go to play it and you're like, now it's worse. How did I make it worse?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I think you sent me all your pads. Or no, you just sent the
I sent the ones that aren't in the flute currently.
Okay.
So I think I only botched one of them with the grommets, so that wasn't too bad.
Nice. Yeah, you've still got 5 in here, so I don't I think
Oh,
I sent you
well,
8.
yeah, I mean, that
So yeah.
sounds, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's 2 there and then I botched one, so yeah.
Okay.
sounds-
So I'll figure out what size these are and I'll swap. Do you want to keep any 17s or do you want me to just swap everything that you sent?
Um, I'm more concerned with the grommets. Though I've switched to using the blunt side of this instead of the pointy end, and that has helped significantly.
Yes.
Imagine.
I know.
So
I've done that when I'm mad.
yeah. Like, oh, let's
Well,
use
I could keep because you're still gonna end up opening these up.
right.
I could keep one of these as a 17
That's what I
and
was
give you
thinking.
4 as these are
Great.
probably going to be 18s. So typically what happens is these 4, if they're different sizes, these 4 are exactly usually one full size different to these. So if these are 17s, these will be 18s.
Yeah, I tried 17 and a half and 18, and 18 didn't want to go in. So you let me know if I'm wrong.
Well, that could be, branding too, because we have also changed the brands. These are Lucians. So
yeah.
And when I picked these out, I was very picky and I made sure to pick all one brand for you. Because I do have 2 brands in this box.
Gotcha.
So actually, no, not this box, because these are the thins. Yeah, they're all Lucians. Yeah, so the only one that I did see that I was like, I'm not sure that's quite the right size. Your thumb key looks a little small.
Yeah.
But it could just be that section of the pad that just poorly placed is right here. And it has a bit of a gap.
Gotcha.
Oh,
I see it. Yeah.
It's tiny. It's not that big of a deal. If it's all the way around, then I'd be like, that's the wrong size. But if it's like one section, it just means that pad wasn't perfectly circular. So not a big deal. Oh, or what's this one? Yeah, quick point. You can see that. There's space there. Now, did these end up being correct sizes?
I thought so.
I sent you 18s, right? For the foot joint? Or what did I send you for the foot joint?
19s.
19s. Okay. Yeah. So if these are 19s, these 4 are probably 18s, but they probably need the same brand and thickness. And the thickness is probably what got you. But that's crazy. Jupiter
Thickness has been getting me this whole time.
de Medici. I don't know if that's an actual Jupiter.
I mean,
It could be a
that's what,
knockoff.
and what, but, well, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Because that, I mean, if I need a mouse. The Jupiter logo. I always hit the wrong button when I try to screen share. There it is. This is what it usually looks like.
Yeah, that's not the same font at all.
Mm-mm. And there's the trademark on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no trademark on this.
Mm-hmm.
If I go to Zoom, you're in the way. I can't see anything. If I go to flutes, the logo does look a little different on the flute than it does on the marching horn. But not that much. You know, let me see this. It still has this the coin of I think it's
Jupiter.
supposed to be the god Jupiter, the Roman god.
That tracks.
And they do like to do this engraving thing.
Let's see.
But okay, there's you can kind of see right there. There's one. And it's like a engraved circle around the word Jupiter.
Right, yeah.
Should actually read this sometime. See if it's any good. This is good. Don't do that.
Yep.
That is no
Don't do
no.
it.
Don't do it. I couldn't even read this if I wanted to. It's in different languages.
Yeah, I think the English part was like 2 pages and
Yeah, way at the top. So that was the best picture I could get. Zoom, you're in the way again. I'm also trying to do this left-handed, so it just makes me more
Oh,
frustrated
yeah.
when Zoom's in the way.
Yeah. I feel that.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find.
Ah, there it is. Oh no, it's the coin.
Oh,
It's the coin
base.
here, and then underneath the coin in the horizontal, it's Jupiter.
Well, regardless, there's no coin on that flute.
Right.
So
So I kind of think this is a different company. They could be, maybe I don't know. They're using a pretty big name.
mhm.
So I don't know how to spell Medici. Oh, it's funky. Oh, Flute Center has it. What the heck?
Kessler and Sons is where I bought it from.
Maybe it's an offshoot. I don't know. I need to ask some other flute techs. Or maybe at least attend to NFA once in my life.
When it comes back to the Midwest, just yeah.
Texas. I was gonna go to Texas.
Hmm.
Stupid 2020 ruined 2 trips for me.
Yeah, Texas would not have been too far from me either, but COVID made it very, very far.
Jupiter's De Medici line of harmony flutes produces and the performance and quality you demand. Carolyn, you could add a little bit more information. Love your website. Could add a little more info for me. But if she carries them, then
Yeah.
it feels like a legit flute.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's garbage or anything,
Right.
but it makes me wonder if they're coming out of the Yamaha factory, or like I think it's got to be a different factory than the actual Jupiter flute,
Sure.
because the Jupiter flutes, the student models, they all use thick pads. I think. Pretty sure. Got one out in the back. I can go pull it out and take it apart.
Double check.
Double check. Yeah. But it does look like it's got its own brand name. And sometimes big companies will do that. They'll buy out smaller companies, or they'll develop a different line that can be a different price point that has different character traits. I don't know. So I'm just gonna make a mental note on my side of things to also know thin pads, super thin pads.
Definitely thin. Yeah.
Yeah. But any questions?
I don't think so. It's pretty straightforward.
I only used marker on like 2 or 3 of these keys. But I will get the pads swapped out and then shipped back to you this Friday. So it's not gonna ship out until Monday.
Yeah, I figured I wouldn't see it until like Thursday or Friday of next week. So
It should be, where are you again?
Springfield, Missouri.
It should be like a 2-day ship.
Well, yeah, I shipped it to you on Tuesday and you got it Thursday. So yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like within 3 states. I think it's 2 days.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So if I ship it out Monday, you should get it by Wednesday. But okay. I probably have it from the last time we shipped things back and forth, but if you could email me your shipping address just to confirm, and I'll email you the invoice for the freight when it's all packaged up.
Okay. Sounds
All
good.
right.
Cool.
Sounds good. Awesome job. Keep it up.
Thanks.
I think
Now
you
that I
are.
have pads, I'm in business. Now that I have pads, I can do stuff. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And I do think you're doing very well. So
Okay.
you might be feeling like you're taking long to do things, but some of it is just the literal getting supplies. So don't forget that.
It's easy to forget, but
Yes. So cool. Well, I will see you tomorrow.
sounds
And I
good.
guess you're just gonna watch.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
oh well, I think we're talking piccolos tomorrow.
I have my piccolo. We could do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds
Cool.
good.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Good
Bye.
night.